With every repair, they brought families to tears. But behind the gentle hum of the workshop, Suzie and Steve Fletcher, the heartwarming siblings of the repair shop, carried a truth far heavier than any antique. While the world admired their craftsmanship, few could fathom the silent struggles waging beyond the barn doors. Now, for the first time, the beloved duo lifts the veil. Fans are left stunned. This is their untold journey, one forged in childhood shadows, long-held silence, and a courageous decision to finally speak. For more than a decade, millions found comfort in the rhythm of the repair shop. The soft rasp of sandpaper, the rhythmic tick of revived clocks, the cathartic tears of reunited families, it all became a sanctuary of healing and heritage. At the heart of it all was Suzie and Steve Fletcher, siblings whose very touch seemed to breathe life back into lost time. Suzie, graceful and composed, was the embodiment of gentle strength. Steve, methodical and serene, provided the quiet anchor. Together, they moved in unison, like the gears of a cherished timepiece, perfectly balanced, unshakably connected. To the audience, they weren't just master restorers, they were family. Icons of trust, of resilience, of the deep ties that hold generations together. Their chemistry on screen, the easy laughter, the silent nods, the complementary rhythm, was a dance of devotion. But behind that seamless harmony was a story hidden in plain sight. A story stitched with sorrow and survival, one not captured in polished silver or weathered wood. Fans occasionally caught fleeting glimpses, a distant look in Suzie's eyes, a rare pause in Steve's voice when the past crept too close. Those subtle cracks hinted at a deeper truth, a truth darker than anyone imagined. Suzie Fletcher's calm exterior concealed a life marked by quiet endurance. Raised in the rugged vastness of Colorado ranchlands, Suzie learned early the weight of work and the cost of silence. It was a life that built resilience, but also left emotional scars. Her marriage once held hope but became a chapter of pain. A man she loved turned cruel. Her days filled with fear disguised behind routine, bruises hidden beneath sleeves, her voice silenced by survival. Still, she never let that pain define her. Instead, she poured her strength into restoration, of heirlooms, of stories, of dignity. Each piece she restored bore the fingerprint of a woman who refused to break, even when bent by life's hardest blows. Steve Fletcher, her brother in blood and bond, was the silent sentinel of this shared history. Surrounded by ticking clocks and coiled springs, his hands worked with precision, but his heart carried quiet wounds of its own. His calm wasn't just natural, it was necessary. Off camera, he bore the responsibility of keeping their sanctuary intact. For Suzie, for himself, for a family legacy too fragile to risk falling apart. Those steady hands not only fixed broken objects, they held the weight of unspoken emotions. They pieced together a fragile piece in a life filled with unresolved pain. Together, they formed a powerful duo. But it was more than shared craft, it was shared survival. Fans saw warmth and wisdom on screen, but behind that was a hidden truth. A truth poised to emerge, a truth that would shake the comforting illusion and reveal the real strength behind the Fletchers. Their childhood in Oxfordshire seemed, at first glance, a picture of simplicity and charm. A creaky, cluttered home filled with the noise of four siblings chasing one another, the smell of tea and old timber, and the flicker of laughter around birthday cakes. A nostalgic portrait of family life. But that portrait hid delicate fractures. Their mother, battling severe postnatal depression, a condition then shrouded in stigma, carried a sadness few could name and fewer could treat. Her emotional absence was a quiet current beneath the chaos. Their father, overwhelmed by the need to be strong, cracked under pressure. His eventual breakdown shattered the fragile calm that held them together. Sometimes, the children were sent away, safeguarded by relatives who sheltered them from emotional storms. Their childhood became a balancing act between outward joy and internal confusion. Steve later spoke of those years with tenderness and honesty. "Our mom suffered dreadfully from postnatal depression," he recalled, his voice edged with memory's heaviness. It wasn't just sadness, it was isolation so profound, it hollowed out the heart of their home. And for their father, that silence became unbearable. "Dad just couldn't cope," Steve recalled softly. "He had a nervous breakdown. It was a dark time for all of us." With gentle reflection, Suzie added, her voice rich with empathy, "Looking back, I feel incredibly sorry for Mum. People didn't understand how devastating postnatal depression really was. The treatments they gave her, they'd be considered barbaric today." Trapped in a system blind to her suffering, their mother became another casualty of a misunderstood illness. And yet, through the haze of hardship, Suzie and Steve's memories of their parents remain nuanced, honest, but still filled with affection. "We had our problems, like most families," Steve admitted quietly. "But we also had each other. Somehow, we made it through. It didn't break us the way you might expect." Their story wasn't one of defeat, it was one of quiet perseverance. A testament to the quiet strength of a family determined to mend what the world couldn't. In her 30s, Suzie made a bold and bittersweet decision: to leave behind the gentle hills of Oxfordshire for the rugged horizon of Colorado, USA. To others, it seemed like an exciting new chapter, a fresh start, a leap into adventure. But for Suzie, it was also an escape. The wide-open skies of America offered her something far more precious than opportunity: distance from pain. In the shadow of the Rockies, she sought healing. And at first, she believed she found it in love. Rob, the man she married, stayed in the background of her public life, a name never spoken on screen, a figure never seen. His silence spoke volumes. What unfolded in that marriage was never revealed to the show's loyal viewers. But behind closed doors, Suzie endured emotional wounds that would take years to heal. What she survived shaped her into the deeply empathetic figure audiences grew to love. She rarely spoke of it, but her resilience, the quiet courage behind every stitch and every smile, told the truth. Her legacy became not just about restoring artifacts, but about restoring herself, piece by piece. Her story stands as a powerful reminder: even in life's darkest chapters, we can find purpose, beauty, and hope. But what about her brother, Steve, still in the UK? While Suzie crossed oceans, Steve stayed rooted in the soil of Oxfordshire, far from the spotlight's full glare. Viewers saw a kind-eyed horologist who breathed new life into time-worn treasures, but very few saw the emotional weight he carried behind that calm exterior. Steve was precise, not just with the mechanics of clocks, but with his personal boundaries. As a father of 5, he quietly cultivated a life of stability. A reputation built on trust and craftsmanship, but also on silence. Behind each chuckle on camera, there was a protective shield. A pact, unspoken but ironclad, between brother and sister. "We were forced to hide this," Suzie later confessed in a rare interview. Back then, families didn't talk. It wasn't safe to. That silence wasn't shame, it was survival. In an era where mental health was taboo, vulnerability could destroy more than reputations. It could shatter already fragile lives. So the Fletchers spoke in glances, in gestures, in silence. Grief was not shared, it was contained. And Steve's choice to remain in Oxfordshire wasn't an escape, but a statement of endurance. His presence in that old barn, surrounded by the soft ticking of restored timepieces, was its own quiet rebellion against the chaos of the past. Cameras couldn't capture the tremble in a hand stilled for television. They couldn't show the nights spent holding onto the weight of legacy, trying not to let it fall. But in the hush between the ticks, something deeper echoed, a lifelong language of pain held gently by love. Their bond wasn't built by chance. It was forged in fire. Even the strongest veneer begins to shift under time's steady pressure. And for Steve and Suzie, the small fissures began to show. Attentive fans noticed Suzie's increasing absences from episodes. Her warm smile, once so constant, began to fade from the screen. Whispers stirred. Something felt different. Her luminous presence seemed dulled, as though the past had begun seeping into the present. Steve, too, grew more reflective. His words during interviews became more deliberate, tinged with a gentle sadness. In podcasts and behind-the-scenes clips, fragments of memories surfaced, tiny pieces of a bigger truth. The audience, drawn in by the Fletchers' genuine warmth and humble artistry, found themselves wondering, what are they not saying? What heartbreak had shaped such quiet grace? Their long-held silence no longer felt like privacy. It felt like a plea, for patience, for understanding, for kindness. Questions multiplied. What had they survived to become this close? What losses had bound them so tightly? The mystery deepened, but so did the empathy. Viewers began to see not just artisans, but survivors. The repair shop was no longer just a space of restoration. It became a backdrop for something far more profound. As the public leaned in, the moment drew closer. The reveal, when it came, would not be about scandal or secrets. It would be about strength, the radical courage it takes to show the world your scars. The decision to speak. This wasn't a sudden reveal. It was a slow, painful unraveling, years of quiet endurance inching toward a breaking point. A decades-long inner reckoning that finally tipped the scales. For so long, Steve and Suzie Fletcher carried this shared history with a kind of silent dignity. Their resilience was unspoken, tucked behind smiles and the gentle rhythm of their work. From the outside, their lives were steeped in admiration, especially on the repair shop, where they appeared grounded, graceful, even untouched by hardship. But behind the glow of public affection stood a fragile wall of silence. Not built from shame, but from necessity. Viewers saw warm grins, easy chemistry, and a deep passion for restoration. What they couldn't see was the weight both siblings quietly bore. Because pain doesn't always wear a visible face. Sometimes, it hides behind calm eyes and soft-spoken voices, disguised as composure. And then, one day, something shifted. The silence began to crack, not with a tabloid splash, not with fanfare, but through a podcast. Intimate, candid, stripped of pretense. A few words, carefully spoken, almost tentative. Like a toe dipped into deep water. But they changed everything. The reaction was immediate. But this time, it wasn't about public curiosity. It was about release. They were done hiding. Steve spoke first. His voice was calm, but layered with the strain of years spent bottling memories. When you grow up with that kind of background, he said, you just carry it quietly. His words weren't bitter, they were reflective, worn smooth by time. But eventually, you have to let some of it go. You can't keep carrying everything inside forever. It eats at you. This wasn't a cry for sympathy. It wasn't performance. It was a reckoning, a choice to replace silence with truth. What followed wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was revolutionary, for them. Vulnerability became their rebellion. Their calm was no longer a mask, it was courage, finally uncloaked. But even then, much remained hidden beneath the surface. What they shared that day was just the beginning. A crack in a wall long fortified by fear, loyalty, and the desperate need to protect. And when the deeper story emerged, it cut like glass. This wasn't just a tale of hardship. It was survival, in its most brutal, unfiltered form. Suzie's marriage, once seen only in vague references and subtle absences, was finally brought into the light. The man she once loved, Rob, had fought pancreatic cancer with grim determination. But the disease, along with the stress and trauma it carried, revealed something far more terrifying, a change not just in body, but in soul. It began subtly, mood swings, controlling behavior, then, something far darker. The moment that haunted Suzie most came without warning. He lifted me off the ground by my throat, she recalled, her voice nearly breaking. My feet, they weren't touching the floor. I knew, I was going to die. Her breath caught in the memory. He was choking me, squeezing so hard I couldn't breathe. I don't know why he let go, but when he did, I was gasping, terrified. Her words didn't need embellishment. The silence that followed was deafening. It shattered the illusion, not just for the audience, but for Suzie herself. I was shocked, she admitted. You think, that won't happen to me. That kind of fear belongs to someone else's story. But then it's your story. And you can't unknow it. The transformation of Rob, from partner to threat, was cruel and disorienting. It stripped away the comfort of certainty. It left behind not just bruises, but questions that would never fully be answered. Yet through it all, there was a quiet strength in Suzie's voice. Not loud, but unwavering. She wasn't just recounting pain. She was reclaiming herself, telling the story no one else could tell for her. Because silence, she had learned, doesn't protect you. Sometimes, it becomes the very thing that keeps you prisoner. It shattered illusions, not just for the audience, but for Suzie herself. I was profoundly shocked, she reflected, eyes distant. I'd always believed it could never happen to me. That kind of violence, that kind of fear, it was for other people, other stories, not hers. He would never hurt me, she said, at least, that's what I told myself, until I saw the truth. Until I felt his hands around my throat. The transformation of Rob, from loving partner to someone unpredictable and dangerous, was a cruel twist of fate that deepened the wounds Suzie carried. Yet, amidst the pain, her words held a quiet strength, an unspoken promise to reclaim her life. This hidden chapter was the hardest to share, but necessary, because silence, as they now understood, was a form of captivity. Speaking was freedom. For years, millions tuned in to watch Suzie and Steve Fletcher work their magic. The cameras captured their meticulous care, the delicate hands breathing new life into history. They saw polished leather, gleaming metal, intricate stitching. But what they didn't see was the quiet resilience beneath it all. The real story wasn't only in the objects, it was in the people who restored them. Behind the scenes, Suzie and Steve were survivors in every sense. They carried invisible scars from childhood hardships, years shadowed by silence and unspoken pain. Laughter shared over restored clock faces masked long nights wrestling with memories that refused to fade. The precise, patient craft of mending worn saddles mirrored the painstaking work they had to do on their own fractured pasts. Each heirloom, each antique, wasn't just a project, it was a symbol, a mirror of their own journeys. They understood the weight of something broken, and the hope wrapped up in its repair. For them, restoration transcended skill. It became a language of healing, a silent but powerful act of reclaiming control over what once felt lost. Steve once said, in a rare moment of candor, we didn't just fix things for others. It became part of our own healing. Bit by bit, as we restored these treasures, we found pieces of ourselves. Suzie, whose gentle demeanor belied a lifetime of hardship, nodded in agreement. Every stitch I made wasn't just about the leather. It was about putting myself back together, about telling a story I wasn't ready to speak aloud. The show's success had painted them as expert restorers, but it never fully captured the depth of their personal battles. They had been forced to hide their pain, to mask their struggles beneath professionalism and smiles, even as the weight of their histories threatened to overwhelm them. Public life demanded a constant performance, a relentless polish that often felt at odds with their internal truths. Yet, through it all, their bond, their unbreakable sibling connection, was a lifeline. It lived in late-night conversations, silent understandings, and a shared commitment to keep moving forward despite the past. Together, they weren't just repairing antiques. They were quietly repairing themselves. When Suzie and Steve Fletcher finally opened the door to their private world, the impact was profound. Viewers who had only seen skilled hands and calm voices suddenly glimpsed the raw, unfiltered humanity behind the restoration benches. They spoke of abuse that haunted childhood years, shadows stretching far longer than anyone had guessed. Of mental health battles fought in silence, even while living in the public eye. Of generational trauma that wrapped around them like a suffocating cloak, inherited from those before them, threatening to pass on yet again. But even amid this darkness, they chose kindness. They chose to keep restoring, not just objects, but the spirit of hope and resilience. Their work became a beacon, a testament to the possibility of healing after pain, to rebuilding what once seemed impossible to save. Suzie's revelation was the heart of it all, a truth kept secret for decades, finally shared with unflinching honesty. This was not just a story of survival, it was a call to courage, to breaking silence, and to embracing imperfection as a form of strength. This wasn't just another episode in a beloved series. It was a reckoning, a moment when the polished veneer of restoration gave way to the raw truth beneath. Fragile, beautiful, and undeniably human. For the first time, they weren't just preserving history for others. They were reclaiming their own story. Piece by piece, stitch by stitch, they rebuilt their identities alongside the heirlooms they so carefully tended. And in doing so, Suzie and Steve Fletcher taught their audience an unforgettable lesson. That healing can be an act of creation, and that sometimes, the greatest restoration is the one we do to ourselves. What's one truth you've kept hidden for too long, and what would it take to finally let it out? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching this video with us, and catch you in the next one.